Hello, we are back. I hope you guys got yourself some coffee, some tea, or whatever poison you have chosen for today. Um, this is the panel discussion, and I would say it's probably one of the highlights of today. I personally always found panel discussions quite interesting. They have a special dynamic, and I remember the first time I was in a panel discussion, it was disguised as a job interview. So I was not prepared or very good. But today we have people who are very good and they know stuff, unlike what I did back then. And so we're inviting some of the speakers today to join a conversation about, is Ukraine really the #1 tech destination? And I'm not sure if everybody sees the faces in the same order as I do, but on my screen, on the top, we have Dominique Piotet, CEO of Unit City. We have Andreas Flodström, founder of Beetroot and Beetroot Academy. Yeah, you can raise your hand. That's a great idea. Then we have Artyom Petrenko, managing director, Sigma Sweden Software. We have Leo Berghald, founder, CEO of Swapgrid. And we have Tobias Tyberg, ambassador of Sweden to Ukraine, who I didn't get to introduce earlier because my internet crashed. Okay, yeah, you were talking to somebody else. So we're going to kick it off, and I would like to invite everybody who's watching this to ask questions in the chat, and we'll be able to, if you want to ask somebody in particular, be clear about who you would like to ask this question, and we'll do our best to accommodate that. But just to kick things off, I have a bit of an open question. We'll see if anybody bites. What do you predict will happen in the next 5 years with tech in Ukraine? What will be the big kind of development we can expect? Give you a moment to think about it.
I can do this if you want, right? Okay, let's try. Well, first, I think we're going to see the trend continue. Ukraine, I mean, tech is already the third of the fourth GDP of the country. I think this will continue to go up, and this will continue to go up because we're going to have more and more talents. We have about 200,000 tech talents, and we in Ukraine are producing about 2,000 a year, thanks to actually things like the Beetroot Academy, or what we do in Unit City, UCode. And I think this trend, increasing the talent, will increase also the number of people who are good, willing to create companies, etc., etc. And it's a virtual circle. Thing is, we're going to see more and more product companies as well, which means that we will hopefully have some venture capital companies that are going to start being interested in Ukraine more and more, and then we will see our first real unicorns arriving. And this is really this is where CZ is going, and I feel like in 5 years this is going to be the second industry of Ukraine. Agriculture, if not the first, but at least the second, and it will contribute to about 20% of the GDP. This is the future of the country that we're building here, and we're seeing that right in front of us right now. This is, I think, why this is so fascinating. This is my take on this.
Do you agree with this?
I definitely agree 100%. And maybe just one thing to add. I hope and believe that the tech industry in Ukraine will sort of also help other fields and other streams. I mean, it's actually not just a tech industry, but it's integrating more and more in the other parts of the economy. So I believe we'll see more of that. Otherwise, I agree fully.
Yeah, just to contribute a little bit, in addition to the growing the tech talents and pools, I think it also we will see increase of number of different startups and younger companies who would like to offer their services and products to the international market, because they gain a quite good experience of working already with different businesses, and now we see quite interest in emerging products and startups, and our initiatives in that domain also will be growing.
I think that we'll see a lot more startups that cater to the domestic startups.
Or global, probably?
Yeah, I would agree with Andreas. I think the domestic market is also obviously very interesting to automate. There are a lot of things that could be done, but overall scale, if we talk about the real globalization, then probably it should have the international focus.
We can't hear you. You're muted. Yeah.
Thing I'd add, I'm not competent to comment on the industry specifics, so that I completely sort of leave to people like Andreas, but and other participants. But I would say is this: I think it'd be very interesting to see to what extent investments in the tech industry are affected by factors that affect the investment climate in Ukraine at large. I think one of the benefits of the tech industry in Ukraine is that it's been relatively more vaccinated from corruption and dysfunctional rule of law than other sectors in the economy. And Andreas, you once gave me a brilliant explanation for that phenomenon. You said it's difficult to steal what's in people's heads. And as we know, all the monetary assets in the tech industry are essentially in people's heads, and that's simply difficult to steal. So that's fantastic. But my guess would be that somehow over time there still will be a correlation between the growth of tech in Ukraine and the development of the investment climate at large, beyond tech-specific factors such as level of education, human capital, etc. And this is the reason why I believe that such a correlation exists, despite the relative, isolation of the tech industry from those risks, is simply what I hear from investors in Sweden. I've had so many phone calls from potential Swedish investors who've been so excited about the obvious benefits of the Ukrainian market, but it seems to me that pretty often at the end of the day, their decisions ultimately end up depending on factors that have to do with the investment climate at large. So I'd just like to offer that downside element to the many upbeat points that I fully agree with.
Yeah, and Andreas, did you have a comment?
Actually, it's just one more comment. If you look at the current trend, in 5 years we will have around 30+% women in the tech. Oh. So you can see it by the gender balance in this panel, for example. It's growing. No, I'm just kidding. But
I did want to get to that question in a moment.
No, but seriously, it's changed a lot only for the last 8 years since I've been in Ukraine, and it's gonna continue to move in that direction to eventually at some point in the future maybe reach a 50-50 point.
Yeah. I want to rotate back to women in tech in a moment, but first I would like to kind of hook on to what Tobias said about kind of tech being a little bit isolated from maybe corruption and other negative aspects, and this can affect investment, of course. Do you see any misconceptions people have about working with Ukraine today that simply are not true? And I want to ask Leo this, because you've been working with Ukraine for a while now. Was there anything that changed your opinion that you now see was a bit of a misconception?
I think I would say that not on my end actually, but most people that when we mention that we have parts of our teams in Ukraine, they just jump to the conclusion that it's because they're sheep. I guess you can find sheep programmers, and that hasn't been on the agenda at all. We know that we have to be able to recruit, fast thinking, fast working people, and it's been much easier for us to find them in Ukraine. So it hasn't been a question of. When I talk to our investors, I've been approached by people like, but you can find people in India and you only have to pay. And it's like, well, but a good developer can produce like 100 times of what a mediocre developer can produce. So it's not about that. It's about the end quality and the end pace that we deliver to our partners so they can deliver the products to their customers. So I would say that that's the most common misunderstanding that I stumble upon out there.
Does anybody disagree or have any other perspective on that question?
Agree, but luckily less and less of that misunderstanding over the last.
I agree, definitely. 5 years.
Yeah. Okay. I actually now want to return to what you brought up, Andreas. We are 6 guys men in this panel discussion. We're supposed to have one woman, but she couldn't make it in the end. So my question to all of you is, what needs to happen in Ukrainian tech to create more women thought leaders in tech?
Well, if I can jump on. Actually, I've been extremely involved in this recently. Unity, we created a partnership with WeTech, which is the organization led by which is one of the main investor in tech actually in Ukraine, and that's a woman. Actually, it's interesting. If you look according to the two best investors tech in Ukraine, both are women. It's Victoria Tibitsko and Lena Kozani from Horizon Capital. And actually, they're leading the way. They're showing us where to go. Signed that partnership. When I look at how many code school, UCode, 25% from only 14% years ago. So it's arriving. It's arriving, but I also had that conversation with a good friend from Silicon Valley, and she told me, well, the tech industry is a little bit sexist, and we have to fight this. We have to fight that sexism, and you know, it's not just about women; it's also about all the other discrimination that we see. And for example, I guess I'm the only openly gay CEO in Ukraine of a large tech company, and we need to change this as well. I mean, that's just not cool, you know. That's life. That's the way it is, and so it's really a question of mindset, of culture, and if we build the right mindset, if we build the right culture in companies, we have an amazing event I love in Unit City called for who are a manager. It's been extremely successful. So we need to change that mindset, and it's hard work, and it's not just in tech, it's in general. So it's a good one.
Yeah, does anybody want to?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, in order to have women in leading tech positions, I would say that we have to start, you know, from the education to get more engineers from the universities in this line of work. And because I don't see, I mean, I think that the tech world is, I can't see really tech companies, tech CEOs trying to keep women down. We're doing it the other way around, and we have one team lead in Ukraine, and she's a fantastic woman, and she's crucial to our success. And we have a number of developers that are women, and they are extremely well performing, and everyone loves it, and we really support them and boost them, and but there has to be a broader selection, because as I mentioned earlier, we test all the applicants for the jobs, and it starts there, because I mean, we have maybe like 20% of the applicants are women, so then it will be difficult to expect 50% leadership positions.
Andreas,
even though we're good there, I would say.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on what Leo actually said there, because if you looked at the statistics, like 8 years ago, 8% of the people in tech were women. And of course, I mean, usually leadership positions are people with more experience. Like now we have over 20%. And I think, I don't know if this is industry standard, but I think the number of women who enter now, it's actually growing to coming quite close to 50 already. I mean, in the academy now for the last year, we have more than 40% women studying. So I mean, we will see that change happen. And I think, again, a little bit repeating, but it's about what base you put in tech has a good chance to change the perception in society, because you have all of these prejudices that go from school, that these professions are for women and so on, and all of this exists in Ukraine. But I think, again, I think it's changing quite quickly with the industry becoming, seeing the industry, getting more and more women great position. So it's just a matter of time. We can stimulate it, but it's kind of...
Just wanted to share an observation or a fact. I mean, there's an anomaly, I think, in the Ukrainian education system, which we probably see in other countries as well, which is that if you look at the academic results in STEM subjects among girls and boys, girls do much better up until graduation, up until and including high school. And yet, when you then look at university admissions, the proportions start to change in favor of boys, not in favor of results, but simply in favor of admissions. And then when you look at the next stage, which is a transition from the academic to the professional life, it skews even further in favor of men. So there is something systemic which is happening there, which might have cultural roots or other roots. But I think for governments who support Ukraine and for Ukrainian political leaders, I therefore believe that there is a huge task in terms of making sure that the assets that are there among girls in high school don't get sort of watered out and filtered out as they progress through stages of their career. And I think we really need to have some solid analysis on why that happens, and then we need to do something about it. And that's why I think that projects like Beetroot or Academy are so valuable. And I know that there are others out there. I mean, Dominique spoke about what you're doing with Human City.
Yeah, it's a lot to say about this topic. How are we moving forward from here? Because women in tech, I see as a part of a larger sustainability question. Like, we can look at having gender equality, we can look at taking care of ourselves, the environment, and so on. So I guess my question is the tech scene today in Ukraine sustainable? Does it create good in the country, and will it create more good? And will it be able to kind of survive and grow based on how it's functioning today? Did you understand the question? It's a complex question. Andreas, did you maybe have any thought on that?
Well, I think you can look at different aspects of it. So I think, so first of all, I think the tech industry definitely contributes to a more sustainable Ukraine. Then is the tech industry itself fully sustainable? Well, I think that a couple of things that needs to happen. There needs to be more companies who invest more in education. That's from a sort of, tech sustainability topic. I think there needs to be more focus on mental health. I think there needs to be more topic of, actually people who work in tech are in average having a 5 times bigger income than the average in the country. I think there needs to be more focus on sort of giving back, providing something more for society. So there's a lot of things more to be done, let's say. It's only the beginning, but again, there are also good examples. And I think, again, that the tech industry is one of the driving force of the sort of more progressive mindset, open-mindedness. Sustainability is such a wide topic.
If I can add something on that, when I look at sustainable tech ecosystem, things, it's talent, it's money, and it's a mindset or a culture. In fact, the paradigm is that money are in a way, you can, if you don't have them, you can bring them, or you can try to get them. Mindset or culture is a very, very complex thing. And it's something that usually work in smaller spaces or smaller place, like San Francisco, like Tel Aviv, because of history, because of things that happened. The hippie movement and the counterculture movement in San Francisco in the 70s is the mindset of Silicon Valley, in fact, if we really think about it. It's changing, not in a good way, in my opinion, but it was the root of it. And so, to me, the question for Ukraine is always, okay, what is the mindset of the ecosystem we're trying to build and the country we're trying to build? And that's what we have to build together as a community. What type of mindset do we want to have? Do we think that is a little bit more rebellious, always interested create a good tech ecosystem, you need a little bit of rebellion. You need to want to break things, to do things in a different way, which is, I think, something Ukraine has, and we could build upon if we turn it something a little bit more positive than negative. But it's a tricky thing. And then there's always that underlying thing is what the government want to play. Critical for Silicon Valley in the 70s, the involvement of the defense industry, the CIA, etc., and research is critical in Silicon Valley, critical in Israel as well. What role does the government wants to play in Ukraine? We see the Ministry of Digital Transformation, very interesting. We see the Ukraine startup fund, very interesting. Is going to continue in that direction? We need to see, but we need a little bit of stability to see that happening. So this is kind of I'm getting in the way I understand what's going on in the country.
And talk about changing mindsets. How does one change the mindset of people? Does anybody have any answer of what the country concretely needs to do to change mindsets?
Go to Burning.
We need to create the Ukrainian Burning Man. John.
There is.
Yeah, but I think in reality, the Ukrainian mindset is very alike to the European mindset, especially in the tech industry, because we are talking about 200,000 people who are engaged, or even 240,000 people who are engaged in the IT industry, and like 9% of them, or 95% of them, they are working towards the European customers and the US customers. I mean, international. Therefore, they have this culture already fit. Otherwise, they would not be accepted by the customers. So I'm saying that the more we develop the ecosystem in Ukraine, the more we will have the right attitude within the community. So that's learning by doing is probably the best example in this sense.
Leo?
Just one thing. I mean, instead of asking what can do, what can happen in a good term, you could also ask, the via negativa way. I mean, what could happen? How could we wreck what's happening in Ukraine now? There's also a couple of really important things. I mean, if you look at what the government did in Belarus, for instance, boom, everything changed within a couple of weeks. So I think that is super important, and I have friends and colleagues running companies that had teams in India, and they came into a situation where everyone was sort of chasing the short-term raises on their own salaries. So everyone was changing employer really often and just trying to raise their salary. It might be good in the short run, but it definitely kills the reputation of a country and the long-term investments. Because when we put efforts in recruiting people and building strong, lastable teams in Ukraine, we do it long-term. So all of these things are super important for us in order to invest as much as we need to do.
Just to contribute, the role of government is super important, as you mentioned, and that's IT industry in Ukraine was developing since 90s, and the involvement of the governmental institutions were quite minimal at that level. And it's better to, if the government wants to support the industry, it's better to do it in a direct dialogue between the companies and this ecosystem, and not go it their own way. So when we establish this platform, and I know there are a lot of happening right now, the dialogue perspective, and a lot of legislation changes and so on, it needs to be approved by all the parties, both the companies, the engineers, the customers. So everybody needs to feel safe and predictable development where it's going. And when we have this aspect from the government and commitment from the government, then everything will be fine.
I want to ask a bit of a close question. I want to go around the team here. What is one piece of practical advice that you would give to somebody starting out working with Ukraine today? Do we have a volunteer to start? Leo, let's start with you.
I would say go for the all-in approach. I mean, don't try to do it a little. I mean, you can do it with a small team, but don't see them as resources, and you don't have to tell them what's happening in the company. You don't have to tell them what kind of deals you're working on. You don't have to tell them that you're working with investors of a certain type. I think to get the right people, you really have to see them as colleagues, that's not sitting 2 desks away. But so that would be my main thing.
Artyom, let's continue.
Yeah, and in order to add to this, finding the right partner probably would be a really good option. And there are a lot of different businesses, a lot of different service providers, and finding those that are fitting the specific customer needs, or those who want to establish something, is probably also one of the best way of going forward.
Andreas.
Again.
Okay, Dominic, you can go first.
Okay. I will actually tell you a story, and I think that's what I tell. 18 months ago, well, maybe 2 years ago, I received. I'm an entrepreneur. I have my company. I received an email. Hey, do you know Ukraine? I said no. He said, do you want to know Ukraine? Of course not. And he said, no, but there's cool thing in tech. You should come and see. And I never flew back to California. That's my piece of advice. Come, spend time here, discover what we have. You will be blown away. I call Ukraine the best kept secret in IT. For how long, I don't know. I don't think it's a good thing that it's a best kept secret, but I think when people come and spend time here, they understand the potential. And I think that would be my piece of advice.
So now you stole my piece of advice, Dominic.
I'm sorry.
I can actually add to that. I mean, in the days when travel used to be a thing, we used to have. I mean, basically, I think that every single person from abroad who visited us in Ukraine has had a positive surprise. Because I mean, to be honest, I mean the reputation Ukraine have, if you're not maybe know too much, it is war, Chernobyl, and all of these things that they all maybe exist. But I mean, when you come and you see the reality. So yeah, come here. Don't come with prejudices. Be open. Yeah, and as Leo said, like treat everyone as part of your same team.
Tobias, do you have anything you would like to add from your perspective?
I feel very inferior, and I'm surrounded by entrepreneurs and tech people, and I'm neither one nor the other. So the only thing I'll say is something I think which sort of echoes the fundamental sentiment of what both Dominique and Andreas mentioned, which is, meet the people. When I came to Ukraine, this was a pretty vague place for me. I mean, I had a pretty vague understanding of what Ukraine is as a society, what the culture is. And one of the things that has been a great source of inspiration and joy for me in the last 18 months has been to discover this place. And I really think that the people, as in any society, as in any place, are sort of the secret sauce of Ukraine. And I think the generation of people who work in companies like the ones that you all represent have some sort of magic, and you spoke, Dominique, about culture, and I can't put my finger on it, but it's one of those things where you know it when you see it. So I'd say, come here and meet a lot of people.
Meet a lot of people. I think with those wise words, we will conclude this panel. So they will echo throughout eternity. Thank you, everybody, for joining and having a bit of a chat. For all our listeners, we are going to be back in about 10-20 seconds with some concluding remarks. You want to stay around, there's some info there, and maybe some networking. So thank you, everybody, and we'll be right back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have to pretend that we're talking because it's some kind of turning the papers, all the talking cue cards. Oh, yeah.